Alright, guys, you know the deal. It's Monday Night Raw review time. And to kick off Monday Night Raw here in Birmingham, England, it was not a live show, by the way. It was recorded. But otherwise, we'll see what happens. It was Sin Cara and Rey Mysterio with R-Truth taking on the primetime players in Antonio Cesaro. Now, this makes sense because Truth has started a feud with Cesaro, and the primetime players have been feuding with Rey Mysterio and Sin Cara. The crowd was electric to start off this Raw. Everybody was into it. Cesaro had a nice save of the 619 that was about to be hit on Darren Young. And then Sin Cara hit a tilt-a-whirl into the ropes, which led to a Rey Mysterio 619, which then led to R-Truth hitting Cesaro with his finisher as he pins the United States Champion to get the first win here on Monday Night Raw. So R-Truth, Rey Mysterio, and Sin Cara pick up the win, and I'll give that match 3 out of 5 stars. The next segment would be Vicky Guerrero would come out to discuss the whole Cena and AJ dilemma. John would end up coming out there and interrupting Vicky, of course, with his green gear over here was back on. Obviously, that makes sense since October was Cancer Awareness Month, so he's done with that gear and he's going to switch back to the green gear over here. There it is. He makes a joke about his only 5 moves that he has, and it was pretty funny because he got the crowd really laughing, and I thought it was pretty funny because it's what people will say about him. They'll talk crap and say, "Oh, he only has 5 wrestling moves," which could be true, but still, he's the big face of the WWE. Um, Vicky presents us with a new footage of AJ leaving her room in a robe, and then there was some more footage with John Cena coming out of the room with a towel to put a "Do Not Disturb" sign on his door. Cena, of course, is denying all of this, and then AJ would come onto the Titantron. She would not be there in person, and she said she would come out there and beat up Vicky, but she doesn't want to take the risk of getting fired. So then Cena would end up seeing Ziggler put his arm around AJ and saying that we all know what AJ really would like to do right now. And then Cena gets pissed, goes back there, and acts like he's going to attack Ziggler, but nothing really happens. So I'll give that segment 3.5 out of 5. And then this would lead us into Paul Heyman recruiting Wade Barrett for Team Punk. He said no at the beginning, then he reconsidered it and says, "Heyman, you owe me one for joining you." So Wade Barrett is now a part of Team Punk. Then the next thing would be Daniel Bryan with Kane on his side versus Cody Rhodes, who had Sandow on his side. The crowd once again was awesome and into this matchup, as was I, but it was really short-lived. Sandow would attack Kane on the side, and then Bryan would take out Sandow because he was distracted, and that would turn into a crossroads by Cody Rhodes for the win. I'll give it 2.5 out of 5 just because of how short it was. I'm not taking away from the wrestlers' talents that were in this match. They could have just been shown a little longer, I think, with the 3-hour show. But Rhodes would go on bragging about it, saying Sandow could beat Kane right now. Sandow wasn't too happy about this because they made a match Sandow versus Kane. Bryan and Rhodes would end up getting kicked out of this match for going at it outside the ring. Um, it would end with a Kane choke slamming Damien Sandow for the win. I'd give it 3 out of 5 just because it wasn't that entertaining of a match. Usually Kane doesn't give the greatest matches in the world, but hey, he does what he can at his age. The next segment would be the whole Brad Maddox coming out there, the guy that screwed Ryback at Hell in the Cell. Um, he denies working with Heyman and Punk. He's saying he has nothing to do with Punk. Punk didn't even know that was going to happen. Maddox is saying all this is going on is that Maddox is saying that he was just trying to become a WWE superstar, and that was the only way he knew how to make an impact. Um, and then he starts begging for a contract, and he even wants a match against Ryback. Now, who would want a match against Ryback? I don't know, but Maddox, I guess, does. Then you would hear a huge pop because Vince McMahon would show up there in England. He would, he says to Maddox, "I will give you $1 million contract if you face Ryback and beat him next Monday on Raw." So that will be a match we will see on Raw. That should be pretty entertaining. We all know how that's probably going to go. Then Vince tells Vicky to come out here and tells her to make the right decision and give the people what they want. And they want Ryback versus Punk and John Cena in a triple threat match at Survivor Series. And that would be made official. So John Cena, Ryback, will face CM Punk at Survivor Series for the WWE title. Now I love this. This is what I want to see. I wanted to see a WWE Championship matchup. And we're going to be seeing that there at Survivor Series. So Punk is now not a part of that tag match, and neither is Ryback. So who will fill in for those guys? Well, we know that Wade Barrett is now on Team Punk, but now they're missing a guy. So who will fill in for CM Punk, and who will fill in for Ryback? I'll give that segment 5 out of 5 just because I like how they got Punk out of the tag match and put him in a title match. That's what I want to see. I want to see him defend his title on the pay-per-view last year where he actually won his title. So that should be pretty cool to see. This would then lead us to Sheamus versus The Miz with Big Show on commentary. Big Show was kind of funny on commentary. He's making a few statements that made me laugh. It's about time he... I kind of like Big Show as a heel. He's a better heel in my opinion. It was a decent match. Miz dominated early. Sheamus was distracted really the whole time just by Big Show's presence at the announce table, which I could understand. Big Show's a beast. He's a giant. It was a lengthy match. There was a commercial in it. It was well fought by both guys. A bro kick would end up winning the matchup, so Sheamus would defeat The Miz, and then there was a stare down between Sheamus and the Big Show after Sheamus's win. I'll give that match 3.5 out of 5. Um, and then we would see Dolph Ziggler creeping behind Vince McMahon's office, and Vicky would come out and tell Ziggler that he's now the team captain for Team Ziggler, not Team Punk, Team Ziggler. So Ziggler takes over the place of Punk, and now he is the captain at Survivor Series versus Team Foley. Uh, of course, Punk's not happy with the decision to be made a triple threat because he comes out of nowhere and starts complaining about it. But then Vicky will announce that CM Punk and Dolph Ziggler will tag up in the main event tonight to face Ryback and John Cena, CM Punk's Survivor Series opponents. Now that should be a good one. Give it a 4 out of 5 just because I think Ziggler's a good replacement for CM Punk and because of how the main event was set up. This would then lead us to the Divas tag match. And we all know how Divas matches go. They're not that entertaining. I'll give it a 2 out of 5. It was a pretty boring match. Caitlyn ended up pinning Eve here. Not much to say about it, but Caitlyn and Layla will pick up the win over Eve and Oksana. I hate Oksana out there. Her Titantron doesn't make sense. Her theme doesn't make sense. She doesn't make sense. Why is she a diva? Who knows? But yeah, 2 out of 5 just because I don't like watching divas. A lot of people don't. I just like staring at them, if you know what I'm saying. This would then lead us to Alberto Del Rio facing the Intercontinental Champion Kofi Kingston. Del Rio dominated most of this matchup. A boom drop would set up a Trouble in Paradise miss, and Del Rio would try for the cross arm breaker, but that was countered in SOS. But surprisingly, Del Rio kicks out of the SOS and 2. But then we hear Randy Orton's music hit, and that causes a distraction for Kofi to get a pin on Alberto Del Rio. So Kofi Kingston gets the win against Alberto Del Rio on Monday Night Raw. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 just because the distraction was caused for Kofi to win, and it wasn't that clean. The next matchup would be Team Cobra, Zack Ryder, and Santino Marella taking on Primo and Epico with a new theme song, which I don't like. Let's just say that. Santino was dancing, pretty comical. I thought it was pretty funny, but that's really why we have Santino on the wrestling rosters, for the comical purpose. We got We Want Ryder chants were going on, so Ryder came in. Ryder ended up getting a Rough Rider on, it was either Primo, I don't know, Primo or Epico, I get them confused sometimes. And then the Cobra would come out and attack and get the pin as Team Cobra would pick up the win over Primo and Epico. I'll give it 2.5 out of 5 just because I'm tired of seeing Santino Marella win matches. The next matchup would be Brodus Clay versus Wade Barrett. Of course, Wade Barrett is from England, so the crowd was going crazy for this matchup. Really behind Barrett. The crowd was loud as the whole night. The crowd was great, energetic crowd. A lot of chants were going on. It was a solid matchup. It was pretty even, but Wade Barrett would get the souvenir elbow for the win. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 just because Brodus Clay is not the most fun wrestler to watch. But Wade Barrett definitely is a talent, and we will be seeing him on Team Ziggler at Survivor Series. The matchup that would come next would be Heath Slater and Jinder Mahal on his side of Heath Slater, 2 men of the 3MB, taking on Jey Uso as Jimmy Uso would sit on the sidelines cheering on his brother. It was an okay match. The new finisher that Slater would use is called the Smash Hit, and he would pick up the win there, 2.5 out of 5, just because I don't like the 3MB. I think it doesn't make sense with the whole Jinder Mahal thing, and Drew McIntyre wasn't even there. And then it was nice to see the Usos on Raw, though. They don't get a lot of TV time, and they worked really hard, it seems like. So this would then lead us to the main event. WWE Champ CM Punk teams up with Money in the Bank contract holders Dolph Ziggler to face Feed Me More Ryback and John Cena. Punk would talk before everybody else would come out there for the main event, saying that he was been screwed by Vince McMahon, that wasn't the right decision, which I think it was the right decision. You're going to get more pay-per-view buys that way. Uh, Ziggler, in my opinion, looked the best the whole matchup. Of course, he sells it the best, but he was dominating Cena. A lot of continuous elbows. It was a pretty good match for Ziggler. Ryback would not see any action early on, and between the match towards the end, we'll see if he gets in, but he did not fight at all during this matchup. Cena would AA Punk, but Punk would somehow tag out and get Ziggler into the matchup. Ziggler once again would get on top of Cena and start dominating him once again. So Ziggler and Punk were in control most of the time. Ryback would finally get in the last minute of the match, attacking both CM Punk and Ziggler, pretty much dominating, and he would end up winning CM Punk with the shell shock. So Cena and Ryback pick up the win in the main event over Punk and Ziggler. There would be a stare down between Cena and Ryback, and well, I guess that makes sense because they will be facing each other at Survivor Series. So overall, I'll give Raw 7.5 out of 10, just because I feel like it was decent wrestling, but the whole setup for Survivor Series was great, and I cannot wait to see Ryback versus John Cena versus CM Punk at Survivor Series. So that is my Raw review, guys. Tell me what you thought of Raw, and tell me what you think about this WWE Championship match that we'll be seeing at Survivor Series. Follow me on Twitter, like and subscribe, and take it easy.